In case you hadn't already realized, the last few years, and particularly some of the recent revelations, have shown us just how prevalent censorship is in the various applications that you use every day. So very much in the spirit of March, there's the hashtag March off Twitter that's been trending. Even though Elon seemingly embraces free speech, you're still ultimately trusting humans to impose rules and restrictions about what you can and can't do. And that is why today I am excited to finally be doing a more in-depth tutorial into none other than Nostr. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. And I've done a conceptual overview of Nostr in another video that I will link and that I invite you to take a look at. In today's video, I am going to recap some of those key concepts. What is Nostr, the protocol? What are clients? What are relays? So we're going to talk about some of those key concepts, and then we're going to move into an actual full tutorial of how to get onto the Nostr protocol, how to interact with it, what you can do, and what else might be coming before we all know it. So I'm very, very excited for today's video. You are not going to want to miss a thing. For those returning to the channel, welcome back, my friends. As always, it is a pleasure to have you. And for those new to the channel, I welcome you as well. If you like this type of content, I invite you to consider subscribing and join us in our growing merry gang in cyberspace. I cover all manner of Bitcoin-related content, including a whole slew of tutorials on how to acquire Bitcoin and secure it, privacy best practices, running your own node, the Lightning Network, and also extensions of self-sovereignty, such as today's video on Nostr, which also has some very neat integrations with Bitcoin, i.e. the internet native money. With all that out of the way, though, let's start with a brief refresher of what Nostr is, and then we'll get into the meat of things. All right, so Nostr, which stands for Notes and Other Stuff Transmitted by Relays, is ultimately a free and open source protocol, on top of which you can build different things. Nostr itself was developed by Fiat Jaf, and since then, and particularly recently, we have seen a proliferation of different clients and builders creating all sorts of things on this protocol. Ultimately, the mission and motivation here is to create censorship-resistant applications, of which the first and most notable has been social media, or a kind of censorship-resistant Twitter. Now, for those of you that have thought about these things for some time, you may remember things like Mastodon. Mastodon was sort of a different take on this same fundamental problem, which is that we trust these big tech platforms to not censor and ban us from these forums on the internet. And so Mastodon had a more federated server architecture where you could kind of like get on board with a particular server, but there was still a lot of trust you were placing in that server maintainer. There was the famous example of, I think it was the CoinKite, Mastodon server, and they banned all the Foundation devices guys, right? And so really the nut that Nostr appears to be cracking is a censorship-resistant protocol that actually works. And the reason it does, I think, is because it's extremely simple. It has boiled things down to this most sort of atomic element called an event. And we can see an example of what that looks like here. So you've got this simple bit of data, all structured, standardized data. That is what the protocol sort of codifies. You've got this ID, a public key that we'll talk about. When was this piece of content created? What kind of content is it? Are there any sort of tags or metadata that is attached to this? And then what is the content itself? And finally, what is the signature associated with that public key to ensure that this is a valid piece of content that actually came from the individual in possession of the private key connected to that public key? And so that is this kernel sort of event that really, if you think about it, forms the basis for a lot of our social media and other interactions on the web. And so Nostr then has two main pieces of architecture that operate on these events. On the one hand, you have clients. Clients are what allow users, you and I, to engage with and interact with the Nostr protocol. So you'll have clients for the web, you'll have clients for Android, you'll have clients for iPhone, and so on and so forth. And these clients allow you, the user, to create these events. But then the other side is what are called relays. Relays are servers that are recording and fetching the events. And so how this works is only the relays that you're actually connected to will record your events. So that's very important. Let's say I'm only connected to relay A and you're only connected to relay B. We actually would not see each other's posts. So relays don't talk to each other, and that is why it's important as a user to be connected to a range or, multiple set of relays. And we'll talk about some of that in more detail. And you may say, well, what if there's a relay that's sort of a bad actor or tries to censor your post because they don't agree with the content? There are many other relays that you can connect to avoid being censored. Furthermore, you can create your own relay if you really want. I will leave a couple links to this terrific documentation, particularly from usenostr.org. And this subpage here shows how to set up a Nostr relay of your own. And if you are running an Umbrel node, there is also now an app in the Umbrel App Store where you can run a private backup relay so that all your content is being backed up. And so if all the public relays you're connected to suddenly collude to censor you, for some reason, then you still have all of your content. I'm not going to go into that in today's video. It's actually pretty easy to set that up on Umbrel. You just follow the instructions in that app store. I might do that in a future video. So let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that in the comments down below. But that's the idea in a nutshell. So the protocol codifies this very atomic, basic Lego block that is the event. And then you have clients and relays that are interacting around that. Clients that let users access the protocol, relays that store the notes and posts and fetch them depending on which that you're connected to. Now, for the rest of this video, I'm going to be taking you through a practical how-to and tutorial for how to actually go and do all this stuff. I'm going to be using Damus, which is the most popular client for iOS. But there are tons of different clients now. These include things like Snort for if you're on the web. They include things like Amethyst or Iris if you're on Android. And you also have browser extensions like Nos2x and even Albi that allow you to have some additional kind of security features like external signers, management of your public and private keys, which we will get into momentarily, and others. So again, I will leave you some of these great resources in the description down below for you to take a look at. But for the rest of this video, I'm going to be taking you through a how-to on Damus. All right, so here we are on Damus. This is what you will see when you download it from the App Store. Again, I'm going to be taking you through Damus today, but you will see a lot of different similarities across clients. And so a lot of the concepts and steps that we're going to be talking about are applicable no matter what client you are using. You'll see right away, welcome to the social network you control, end-to-end encrypted private messaging. It's private, which is nice, right? There's absolutely no email, phone number, nothing to get started. We're just going to create a public and private key, as you will see momentarily. And it's got a lot of slick integrations with Bitcoin Lightning, which is very cool. Now, if you were to have a existing public private key and profile, you could always go to log in and enter your NSEC or your private key in order to log in, right? So this operates very, very similar structurally to Bitcoin. You have a public key that is your public identifier. You can share that for them to add and follow you. And you have your private key, which allows you to log in, right? So there's no passwords, none of that. But we'll do this all from scratch. So we're going to go to create account. We've got this end user license agreement, which is interesting. I'm assuming they had to put this in to appease Apple, but what are you going to do? Let's hit accept. All right, and you'll see we get this little robot avatar. We can change that in a moment. Username, let's say something like Rager Major Demo, Rager Major, etc. And so we've put in some basic information. We've got our public key here. We can go ahead and hit create. Okay, so you'll want to copy your public key, and then here is the private key as well. Goes without saying, but do not share this with anyone. There have been issues of people posting their private key instead of their public key on things like Twitter. So again, the npub is what you can share publicly. That is for folks to find you and follow you on Damus or whatever client you happen to be using. And the private key is what you use to log in itself. So copy both of these down, ideally into a secure password manager, and then away we go. So we're sort of dropped in this feed that looks fairly similar to something like Twitter. And you might say, well, what content am I seeing here? You are seeing posts and reposts from Damus, which you are following by default, right? And we can see posts as well. So this is your feed, basically. If you click over on the bottom, you see you'll have DMs, right? Similar to Twitter. You've got the universe, which is a more global view of things. Now you can hit this top right icon and we want to flick on a number of these other relays. There's really no downside to doing more relays. Generally is going to be better. You'll notice in the case of Eden that that's actually a paid relay, as you can see in the little green sign there. We will talk through that later. But we've now got ourselves connected to a bunch of relays. And if we refresh, we can now see that there's a bunch of posts in this global feed. So the universe or this search feature is a more global feed where you can see content where you're not necessarily following these individuals. Like I'm not necessarily following this individual that has posted a Lightning invoice here or any of these other folks. And then as you get notifications, you can see those notifications here as well, broken out into mentions and zaps, which we will discuss. So right now, if we click in the top left, our little robot looking guy, you'll see this menu on the left. And we can see a number of different options. We can see our profile, we can see any users that we've blocked from seeing posts for. We can see a relays option. So that's what we just looked at in the other option there. And you can see we've now connected ourselves to a number of these. We've got bookmarks similar to Twitter. And then we've also got settings as well, which is where you can come back and see your private key or your secret key if you want. You can also see some different options. You can sign out, you can permanently delete the account, all sorts of stuff. So let's come back and let's go to our profile. And you can see that we look a little bit barren, a little bit sparse, right? We've got this default little robot guy. We've got a little banner of Nostriches, so that's the sort of mascot for Nostr. And so let's set up our profile a bit. We can come over and hit edit. So we've got our name that we input. We've got the username. These don't have to be globally unique, by the way. And now you'll see there are some ways we can customize the images here. Profile picture, banner image, and you'll see that it's actually in the form of a URL. And this is a very important point about Nostr. You will need to put an actual link. And so the way that a lot of people will do that is by going over to nostr.build. Nostr.build. And what this lets you do is it lets you upload JPEGs, GIFs, MP4s, whatever, and then get that URL that you can then post back into your Nostr client. And again, this is an option if you're not hosting your own images or things like that. So you can always come to nostr.build. And so I'll go ahead and add a file. So there we go. I've got my classic kind of Twitter photo there, right? And so I'll hit upload. And now I've got this URL. So I'll copy this URL. I'll come back to Damus, and I will paste that in for the profile picture. Now I'll scroll down just to show what that looks like. I'll hit save, and boom, you can see that it has now been updated. So that is how you change your profile picture. You can do the same thing for the banner image as well. You'll sometimes notice some bugginess still. Again, these are still very, very early days for all of this. Like for example, you'll see the profile picture link is actually blank now when we just obviously added it. So you will sometimes see some buggy things like that. But let's keep going. You can add a website, right? It could be your personal website. Or for example, I might put, my YouTube channel. And importantly, you can also add a Lightning address. So this is very cool. This is going to allow you to tip others and receive tips over the Lightning Network. I recently did a video on Alby, which I will throw up now and link in the description down below, where I talked about Lightning addresses. So I'd encourage you to check that out if this is a totally new concept for you. But a Lightning address, to put it simply, is similar to an email address, except for money. You'll see this NIP05 verification. We will come back to this in just a moment. I can hit save. And so now you'll notice I also have this little lightning icon that has been added at the top. So that is now where someone else could come and pay me through any number of these different wallets, or they could just copy that invoice, select the amount of sats they wish to pay me, and that is how someone could come and tip you on Nostr. Very, very cool stuff. Now, you'll notice in many cases that there are folks that have a check mark next to their name. So you may rightly note that for me to basically copy this public key and share it with anyone who wants to follow me, that can be a little bit of a cumbersome exercise. So how do I map that public key of mine to a more standard looking identifier? That is what we are going to do next. And the example that I'm going to show you is via nostrplebs.com. So it gives us a little bit of context. What is a NIP5? NIP, by the way, stands for Nostr Improvement Protocols, very similar to BIPs on the Bitcoin side. And as it notes, and as I was alluding to, it's a human readable identifier for your public key. It makes finding your profile on Nostr easier. And it also gives you that shiny sort of check mark. Now, you don't have to do this through Nostr Plebs. You can see this link where you have a comparison. Obviously, they're going to try and make themselves look, the best. Nostr verified, you've got Albi, Iris does this, Bitcoin Nostr. So you've got many different providers. And I think even this is not fully complete. You can also verify yourself, but that does require you to be hosting all your own stuff. A lot of people are going to opt for one of these providers. And so what do you get for this beyond the more human readable identifier as well as the verified checkmark? You get access to the directory, which is quite useful. This allows you to search for folks in a much more human readable way, right? Obviously, a lot of people are posting their npubs on Twitter to their existing Twitter followers, but this is also a really nice way to look people up as well. So for example, you could look and find, that's my actual, Nostr profile, which I will share with you guys in the description so you can follow me there. But you get the points. You get this directory, and there are also plans for other features to come. Email-enabled NIP5 IDs, relay access, which is quite nice, a high-quality relay, more customization options, etc. So again, you by no means have to do this. I just wanted to show how to do it if you wish. And so how it would work is you go to register, username that you want. So I might say Rager Major Demo if I were to actually do this. I would enter my pub key. So I'll come over and copy my public key from my profile, paste that in, right? And I'll hit next. And this will now show me an invoice to pay my 12.5K sats in order to get this identifier. And I could, pay this with whatever wallet that I want. And so now you've got your profile set up. You've potentially verified with a NIP5 identifier. It's time to add people to follow. So again, you probably will have seen all sorts of people posting their npubs on Twitter. That is a great way to find people to follow. A lot of people are posting it in their Twitter profiles. So you can copy that. To show an example of that, let's just grab mine. So, right, I can copy either one of these. And let's come over and we'll search. And there I am. Okay, so that's how you would find people. You would search for it, click, and there is my actual profile. You'll see the little check mark. And so you can go and, follow individuals accordingly. So that's how you add people. In terms of making posts, you can come over to the home screen and hit the little plus icon. And as you will see, you've got a simple little interface for your posts. So I might say, hello world, and there it is. And so you'll notice a couple things, right? People can come and comment, right? They can leave a comment just as you would expect. They can repost this, which is like a retweet. They can give it a like or hang loose sign in this case, right? So it's called a reaction. And very cool, people can send you zaps. I'm going to show how to do that in just a moment. The other thing I want to cover is that you'll notice that when we go to post when we go to make posts, you'll notice that there's not like little icons where I can add images and things like that. And so again, if you wanted to do that, you would do it like we were doing for our profile picture. You would have to post the actual URL to the image that you are trying to show. But with that being said, like for example, if you were to come over and maybe let's just copy, you know, my latest video link and post it in here and post it, you'll see that you do get the little piece that pops up here. So you at least have that when you're sharing different things. Where possible, it will pull in additional kind of multimedia, visuals, etc. Now, the last thing I want to show in this tutorial is how to make zaps. So let's go ahead, and I have grabbed Jack Dorsey's profile from his Twitter account. And here is Mr. Jack. So let's follow Jack. So let's just scroll a little bit. Okay, so I think we found a winner. So we've got this terrific look of Jack riding a ostrich. So that's fantastic. And so you can see it's got 383 reactions and 56 zaps, amounting to 74,500 sats that you can see in this little lightning. So we can add a little reaction to it, and then we can click the lightning bolt icon, and it will bring up this menu that we saw earlier. So in my case, I'm just going to open my Zebedee wallet, and here I can see 1,000 sats that I'm going to be sending. Now, maybe you say, well, wait a second, a little rich for my blood. You can always come back and change those settings in your settings here. Default zap amount in sats, right? Maybe you say, you know, 500. Let's not get crazy here. So let's get back to Jack. Go back to our little ostrich guy with the lightning bolt. Open Zebedee. There's the 500 sats. Confirm and pay. And bada boom. Payment sent. So that has been added to Jack's post. And you can now see it's gone up to 75K. 57 zaps instead of 56. So this is just a really cool way to tip people for just awesome content. This opens up, as you can imagine, a whole slew of different monetization methods for content creators. And so there you have it. And so to recap, we created our account with our public and private key. We took a look at how to configure our profile using the edit feature. We added in a little profile picture, a little website, about me. We added our lightning address. Again, check out my Get Alby video if that is a new concept for you. And then if we had gone through with that registration process on Nostr Plebs for our NIP5 identifier, we would paste that in there. We then took a look at how to add and follow people using their NPub and using the search feature. Pretty simple. We took a look at making posts, and we took a look at making zaps. So that, I think, is a pretty good primer for you to get onto Nostr. And so with that, you may ask, well, what else? Like, what else can Nostr do? And there's actually some pretty cool stuff being developed. So notably, we just went through the Twitter alternative, right? This has kind of been the main use case thus far with a number of those different clients that we talked about. But there's also text sharing. There's blogs with BlogStack. There's a Telegram alternative. There's a Reddit alternative, online games even. So all of this is being developed. I think we're going to see some truly, truly exciting stuff. With all of that, though, let's go ahead and conclude today's video. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think of Nostr? Have you tried it? Have you used it? What are your favorite clients? Are there videos on related topics you'd like to see in future videos? Let me know in the comments down below. But I hope you found this valuable and insightful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. Use the share feature underneath this video. That really does help get this to a broader audience. And if you were so enamored with this content and you want to donate to a pleb, which really does help me continue to make these videos, you can do so in a number of ways. For one, go and add me on Nostr and you can send me a tip that way. Or if you're watching this YouTube video from your browser and you have the Alby web extension, you can simply click that bad boy and send some Satoshis that way. Or lastly, you will see my Lightning address and Strike account on the final screen momentarily. Never expected, always incredibly appreciated in the spirit of value for value. But for now, my friends, we'll go ahead and leave this here. As a reminder, every sat counts. And until next time, I'll see you then.